abandoned to die in rising waters, tethered to a sinking world with no escape. This former police canine had served his community faithfully, only to be betrayed when he needed help most. Then, through the murky flood, came a 10-year-old girl in a tiny rowboat. What happened next wouldn't just save his life, it would change an entire community forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The skies above Mill Creek Valley had been threatening for days. Dark, swollen clouds hung low over the Appalachian foothills, casting the small town in premature twilight. Weather alerts buzzed on phones. Emergency broadcasts interrupted regular programming. The Sawyer River, normally a gentle presence, cutting through the heart of town, had transformed into something ominous, a swelling, angry beast awakening from slumber. At the eastern edge of town, in a neglected property perched dangerously close to the river's bend, a black and tan Belgian Malinois named Ranger stared anxiously at the darkening sky. His powerful body, once the pride of the Mill Creek Valley, Police Department's K9 unit, was now tense with growing fear. Rain pelted his thick coat, weighing it down, chilling him to the bone. The cold metal of a heavy chain bit into his neck, connecting him to a rusted post, driven deep into the muddy earth beside the back porch. The chain was short, barely giving him enough room to stand properly. There was no shelter from the intensifying storm, no protection from the sheets of rain, now driving sideways in the wind. The house behind him had been his home for only 6 months, ever since his handler, Officer James Mercer, had been killed in the line of duty. The department had arranged for Ranger's retirement and adoption by Mercer's cousin, a man named Victor, who had promised to care for the decorated K9. But promises, Ranger had learned, could be as hollow as the abandoned shed across the property. Victor had taken him in, but affection quickly turned to neglect, then to outright abuse. Today, Victor had thrown a half-empty bag of dog food onto the back porch, loaded his pickup with hastily packed possessions, and left without a backward glance at the animal he'd sworn to protect. As flood sirens wailed across town, Ranger had watched his owner drive away, leaving him chained to a house that would soon be underwater. A crack of thunder made Ranger flinch, pulling painfully against his restraint. He had been trained never to show fear, to face gunfire, dangerous suspects, and chaotic environments with unwavering courage. But no training had prepared him for abandonment. No lessons had taught him how to survive being left to drown. 3 miles away, in the heart of town, 10-year-old Lily Chen sat cross-legged on her bed, her small hands pressed against her bedroom window. Through rivulets of rain streaming down the glass, she watched as neighbors loaded cars and trucks with precious belongings. Her own family's minivan was already packed, waiting in the driveway for the final evacuation order. "Lily," her mother called from downstairs, "come help with the photo albums." But Lily couldn't pull herself away from the window. Something about the storm's raw power held her transfixed. She had lived in Mill Creek Valley her entire life, had weathered spring, floods before, but something about this storm felt different, more significant, as if it were bringing not just destruction, but a moment that would divide her life into before and after. "Lily!" her mother called again, more urgently this time. "Coming!" the girl answered, reluctantly sliding off her bed. As she helped her parents pack the final boxes, a news alert flashed across her father's phone. The evacuation was no longer optional. The rising waters had compromised the old dam upstream. Everyone needed to leave immediately. "That's it," her father said, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "We're going now." They hurried to the car, rain lashing against them in the short distance from porch to driveway. As her father started the engine, Lily noticed something strange through the rear window. An old man from down the street, struggling with a small wooden rowboat, trying to secure it to the top of his car. "Dad, wait," she said. "Mr. Porter needs help." Her father hesitated, then, with a quick nod, stepped back into the downpour to assist their elderly neighbor. Lily watched as they lifted the boat onto Mr. Porter's aging station wagon, her father's strong hands making quick work of the ropes and knots. When her father returned, soaked to the skin, Lily asked, "Why does Mr. Porter need a boat? Aren't we all going to the shelter on high ground?" Her father shook the rain from his hair. "Some people have family across the river they're worried about. And Mr. Porter, well, he's lived through floods worse than this. Says he feels safer having options." As their car joined the slow procession of vehicles leaving town, Lily's thoughts returned to the small wooden boat. Something about it nagged at her, a half-formed thought, a question she couldn't quite articulate. The shelter was set up in the high school gymnasium on the north side of town, safely elevated above the floodplain. Inside, the polished basketball court had disappeared beneath a sea of cots, blankets, and exhausted families. Red Cross volunteers moved through the crowd, distributing water bottles and emergency information packets. Lily's family claimed a small corner of the gym, arranging their belongings around 3 adjacent cots. Her mother immediately went to work helping coordinate meal distribution, while her father joined a group of men discussing volunteer rescue efforts. Left momentarily to her own devices, Lily wandered toward the large windows overlooking the town below. From this vantage point, she could see the destruction already taking place. The main street had become a shallow river, with water lapping at storefront doors. Trees bent dangerously in the wind. A children's playground was half submerged, the swings moving ghost-like above the churning water. But it was what she couldn't see. That bothered her. The eastern edge of town, where the river curved around the old mill properties, was hidden from view. Among those properties was the former Mercer place, now owned by Victor Lerner, a man known throughout town for his surly demeanor and questionable treatment of the K9 hero he'd inherited. Lily had always loved dogs. Her parents' apartment building didn't allow pets, so she'd become the neighborhood's unofficial dog sitter, walking and playing with other people's K9 companions whenever possible. She had even volunteered at the local animal shelter until they deemed her old enough to handle the larger dogs. And she remembered Ranger, the magnificent Belgian Malinois who had once visited her school for a demonstration, showing off his training by finding hidden contraband and taking down a suspect, the assistant principal in a padded suit. Officer Mercer had let the children pet Ranger afterward, explaining how the dog could go from fierce protector to gentle companion in an instant. When Officer Mercer died in a tragic traffic stop gone wrong, the whole town had mourned. Everyone knew Ranger had been given to Mercer's cousin, but few people had seen the dog since then. Occasional rumors circulated that Victor kept Ranger chained outside regardless of whether that the once proud K9 had grown thin and fearful. Lily's father had once mentioned reporting him to animal control, but nothing ever seemed to come of such reports in their small town. Now, as the rain beat against the high school windows, a terrible thought seized Lily. What if Victor had evacuated without Ranger? What if the heroic dog who had saved lives was now left to lose his own? The idea burrowed into her mind, impossible to dislodge. She tried to push it away, to focus on helping sort donated clothing or playing cards with the younger children, but the question returned with each clap of thunder. Was Ranger out there, alone in the flood? When night fell, the gymnasium lights were dimmed but not extinguished. In the half-light, Lily lay on her cot, listening to the rhythm of rain on the roof and the soft snores of exhausted evacuees. Her parents slept fitfully on either side of her, her mother's hand still clutching her emergency go-bag, her father's phone set to maximum volume in case of important alerts. Sometime after midnight, Lily made her decision. She slipped from beneath her blanket, pulled on her yellow raincoat, and eased past the sleeping volunteer at the gym door. The school corridors were dark and eerily quiet, her sneakers squeaking softly on the polished floors. She knew what she was doing was dangerous, perhaps even foolish. But something deep inside her, something stronger than fear or reason, propelled her forward. If Ranger was out there, chained and drowning, she couldn't live with herself knowing she had done nothing. Outside, the rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, but the wind still howled between buildings. The school parking lot, crowded hours earlier, now held only emergency vehicles and a few cars belonging to volunteer staff. Among them, she spotted Mr. Porter's station wagon and, still secured to its roof, the small wooden rowboat. Lily hesitated only briefly before approaching the vehicle. The knots her father had tied were complex but familiar. He had taught her basic sailing knots during summer trips to her grandfather's lake house. With nimble fingers, she loosened them one by one until the boat shifted slightly, ready to be removed. But the boat was heavy, much heavier than she had anticipated. She strained, muscles burning, but couldn't lift it from the car roof. Frustrated tears mixed with raindrops on her cheeks. She was failing before she'd even begun. "Need some help with that?" The voice startled her so badly she nearly fell. Turning, she found herself face to face with Mr. Porter himself, his weathered features illuminated by a flashlight he held at chest level. I was just..." Lily stammered, searching for an explanation that wouldn't sound like attempted. "Theft." Mr. Porter studied her for a long moment, then asked simply, "Where are you planning to go in my boat, young lady?" The kindness in his voice broke through her fear. Words tumbled out in a rush. "Ranger, Officer Mercer's dog. I think Victor left him behind. He keeps him chained up all the time. He might be drowning right now, and nobody's doing anything about it, and I just thought..." Mr. Porter held up a hand, silencing her. "The Mercer place. That's over on River Bend Road." Lily nodded miserably, certain now that she would be marched back to her parents. Her rescue mission ended before it began. Instead, the old man sighed deeply, his breath fogging in the cool night air. "My Henry was a K9 handler too, you know, before he passed." He was quiet for a moment, lost in memory. "Those dogs, they give everything, everything." He seemed to come to a decision, straightening his shoulders. "I can't let you take this boat out alone in a flood. That would be irresponsible." Lily's heart sank. "So I guess I'll have to come with you," he finished. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. "You will." "We'll need to leave your parents a note," Mr. Porter said firmly, "and you'll do exactly as I say when I say it." "The river's dangerous tonight." Lily nodded eagerly, hope blooming in her chest. Together they lowered the boat from the car and carried it to the edge of the school property, where floodwaters had already transformed the lower athletic fields into a muddy lake. Mr. Porter scribbled a quick note on a scrap of paper and tucked it under her father's windshield wiper, then returned with life vests and a waterproof flashlight. "Stay low in the boat," he instructed as he helped her climb in. "And remember, if I tell you we have to turn back, we turn back. No arguments." The rowboat slipped into the floodwaters with barely a sound. Mr. Porter's experienced hands guided the oars, navigating between submerged street signs and floating debris. Lily sat in the bow, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, searching for landmarks to guide them toward River Bend Road. The journey was slow and treacherous. Twice they nearly capsized when the current caught them, spinning the small craft like a toy. Mr. Porter's face grew increasingly grim as they pressed deeper into the flooded town, past darkened storefronts and half-submerged cars. "We should be seeing the old mill soon," he said, voice barely audible above the rush of water. "River Bend Road is just beyond it." As if conjured by his words, the silhouette of the abandoned mill appeared through the mist, a hulking shadow against the night sky. They guided the boat around it, fighting the strengthening current where the river proper merged with the floodwaters. And then Lily heard it, a sound that pierced the night and squeezed her heart, barking desperate and hoarse, coming from somewhere ahead. "That's him!" she cried. "That's Ranger!" Mr. Porter adjusted course, rowing toward the sound with renewed determination. As they rounded a bend, the beam of Lily's flashlight caught something that made her gasp. A single-story house, water already lapping at its windows, and on what remained of the back porch, a large dog, frantically pulling against a chain that kept him tethered to the drowning structure. "Ranger!" Lily called out. The dog's barking instantly changed, becoming more urgent, almost pleading. Mr. Porter maneuvered the boat as close as possible to the porch, but the current was stronger. Here, threatening to slam them against the house or sweep them past it entirely. "I can't hold us steady for long," he warned. "Whatever you're going to do, it needs to happen fast." Lily's mind raced. The distance between boat and porch was small but significant, about 4 feet of churning water that could easily pull her under. But Ranger was watching her now, his eyes reflecting the flashlight beam with an intelligence that seemed almost human. He had stopped barking, as if understanding that help had finally arrived. "I need to get to him," Lily said, her voice steadier than she felt. Mr. Porter nodded grimly. "I'll bring us as close as I can. You'll have one chance to jump, not before. I say so, understand?" She nodded, positioning herself at the edge of the boat, muscles tense and ready. Mr. Porter fought the current, inching them closer to the porch with expert movements of the oars. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool night air. "Now!" he commanded. Lily leaped, arms outstretched. For one terrifying moment, she was suspended over the dark water, certain she would fall short. Then her hands caught the edge of the porch, her body slamming against its side. Pain shot through her shoulders as she clung desperately to the slippery wood. With a strength born of adrenaline, she pulled herself up and onto the porch. Ranger whined softly, his tail giving a single, hopeful wag. Up close, his condition was worse than she had feared. His once glossy coat was matted and dull. Ribs showed clearly beneath his skin. The heavy chain around his neck had rubbed raw patches where it chafed against his flesh. "It's okay, boy," Lily whispered, extending her hand slowly, palm up, just as she'd been taught to approach unfamiliar dogs. "I'm here to help you." Ranger sniffed her hand cautiously, then licked it once, a gesture of trust that brought tears to Lily's eyes. "Good boy," she said, examining the chain. It was secured to his collar with a padlock, the other end bolted to a metal ring set in the porch post. There would be no way to free him without tools. "The whole porch is going," Mr. Porter called urgently from the boat. "You need to get back here now." As if to emphasize his warning, the structure beneath them groaned ominously. Lily felt it shift, the water having undermined its foundation. They had minutes, maybe only seconds, before it collapsed completely. "I can't leave him," she cried, wrapping her arms around Ranger's neck. The chains locked. Mr. Porter's face was a mask of concern, but his voice remained calm. "Check the post. See if you can pull it free." Lily examined where the chain connected to the porch. The wooden post was old, softened by years of weather, and now thoroughly soaked by floodwater. She braced her feet and pulled with all her might, but the post held firm. Ranger seemed to understand her efforts. He moved to her side and began pulling too, his powerful body straining against the chain. Together, they leaned their weight against it, both desperate for the freedom that seemed just beyond reach. A splintering crack rang out as the porch gave another lurch. Water surged over the edges, soaking Lily's sneakers. Time had run out. "Get back to the boat now," Mr. Porter shouted. "We'll find another way." But Lily couldn't abandon Ranger, not after seeing the hope in his eyes. A desperate idea formed in her mind. If she couldn't free the chain from the post, perhaps she could free Ranger from the chain. Her fingers found his collar, exploring it by touch in the dim light. It was a standard design, thick leather with a metal buckle. The padlock secured the chain to a metal ring on the collar, but the collar itself might still be removable. "Come closer, boy," she murmured, working at the buckle with trembling fingers. It was stiff with age and neglect, resisting her efforts. The porch tilted sharply, sending both girl and dog sliding toward the water's edge. Lily caught herself against the house wall, but the movement had shifted Ranger's position, pulling the collar tight against his throat. Panic threatened to overwhelm her. The collar wouldn't budge. The post wouldn't break. They were running out of options as fast as they were running out of time. Then, through her fear, came clarity, a memory of something her father had once shown her when a belt had become stuck. She took a deep breath and relaxed her fingers, focusing not on pulling the collar's end through the buckle, but on pushing the middle section to create slack. Slowly, millimeter by millimeter, the wet leather began to give. Ranger stood perfectly still, as if understanding that his life depended on these small, careful movements. With a final tug, the collar loosened enough to slip over his head. Lily pulled it free just as the porch gave a final, decisive lurch. "Jump now!" Mr. Porter yelled, positioning the boat as close as possible. Lily turned to Ranger, who stood tensed and ready beside her. "Together," she told him. "We jump together." As the porch began its final collapse into the floodwaters, Lily and Ranger leaped as one toward the waiting boat. For an eternal moment, they were airborne above the churning currents. Then they crashed into the small craft, nearly capsizing it with their combined weight. Mr. Porter steadied the boat with practiced movements, helping Lily secure herself. On the middle bench, Ranger shook himself, spraying water everywhere, then settled in the bow, his eyes never leaving Lily's face. "You did it," Mr. Porter said quietly, a note of awe in his voice. "I've never seen anything like it." Lily reached forward to stroke Ranger's head, relief making her fingers tremble. "We did it," she corrected, including both man and dog in her statement. As Mr. Porter turned the boat and began the difficult journey back through the flooded town, Lily felt something profound shift within her. She had set out to save a dog, but somehow in the process she had discovered a courage she never knew she possessed. Ranger rested his head on her knee, his eyes, once dull with despair, now bright with what could only be described as gratitude. The chain that had bound him lay abandoned, dragged beneath the floodwaters along with the remnants of his prison. Above them, through a break in the clouds, stars appeared, the first light in what had been an endlessly dark night. The storm wasn't over, but in this moment, with the current carrying them towards safety, Lily knew that something important had been salvaged from its destruction. A life had been saved, a hero had been remembered, and a little girl had discovered that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to look away when others suffer. The flood would recede eventually, the town would rebuild, but some changes, like the bond formed between a child and a dog on this tumultuous night, would remain long after the waters had returned to their banks. As they approached the lights of the emergency shelter, Lily whispered a promise to the dog who had endured so much. "You're safe now, Ranger. You're free." And in the quiet space between heartbeats, she understood that sometimes freedom isn't just about breaking chains. Sometimes it's about finding the courage to forge new connections, ones built not on obligation or ownership, but on a simple, profound choice to care when caring seems impossible. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The journey back to the high school shelter was arduous. The floodwaters had risen further, creating dangerous currents that threatened to capsize their small rowboat with each passing moment. Mr. Porter's weathered hands gripped the oars tightly, his knuckles white with exertion as he fought against nature's fury. In the bow, Ranger sat alert despite his exhaustion, his keen eyes scanning the dark waters ahead as if still performing his duties as a police canine. Lily kept one arm wrapped around his damp body, providing warmth and reassurance. Each time the boat lurched in the unpredictable current, man, girl and dog adjusted their weight in perfect synchronization, a team formed in crisis, now united in purpose. "There!" Mr. Porter finally gasped, pointing toward a set of bright emergency lights cutting through the rain. The school. As they approached the makeshift landing area, once the school's bus drop-off zone, now a muddy shoreline, figures emerged from the building. Flashlight beams swept across the water, catching their small craft in circles of harsh white light. "Lily Chen!" Her father's voice carried over the rumble of the storm, a complex mixture of fury and relief. "Oh my God, Lily!" The boat scraped against submerged asphalt. Immediately, strong hands reached to secure it, pulling it firmly to shore. Lily's father splashed into knee-deep water without hesitation, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "Dad, Lily began. But her explanation dissolved as her father lifted her from the boat, crushing her against his chest. "You could have been killed," he whispered hoarsely into her hair. "Do you understand? You could have been gone." Only then did he notice the large, bedraggled dog who had risen to standing position in the boat, watching the reunion with intelligent, wary eyes. "What in the world?" he started. "This is Ranger," Lily said quickly, pulling back to meet her father's gaze. "Officer Mercer's dog. Victor abandoned him, Dad. Left him chained to die." Mr. Porter climbed stiffly from the boat, his arthritis evident in each careful movement. "It's true, David," he confirmed, addressing Lily's father. "The dog was chained to a porch that was about to collapse. Another 10 minutes and he would have drowned." A small crowd had gathered now. Emergency, workers, volunteers, and curious evacuees drawn by the commotion. Among them, Lily spotted her mother pushing forward, face pale with fear. "Lily!" she cried, joining their waterlogged huddle. "We've been searching everywhere. How could you just—" Her voice faltered as she noticed Ranger, who had now cautiously stepped from the boat onto solid ground, staying close to Lily's side. Before more questions could be asked, a tall figure in a police uniform broke through the crowd. Chief Harrison, head of the Mill Creek Valley Police Department, stared at the Belgian Malinois with undisguised shock. Is that Jim Mercer's dog?" he asked, kneeling slowly to get a better look. Ranger's reaction was immediate and profound. At the sight of the uniform, at the sound of his former handler's name, his posture changed. Despite his weakened state, he straightened, ears forward as if reporting for duty. The police chief's weathered face softened with emotion. "I'll be damned," he murmured, extending a hand that Ranger sniffed before allowing a brief touch. "We all thought Victor had taken him to his brother's place out of state." "He left him chained to die," Lily repeated, her young voice steady, with conviction. "He doesn't deserve to have Ranger back. Ever." Chief Harrison's expression hardened. "No," he agreed quietly. "He doesn't." A paramedic pushed forward, insisting on checking Lily for hypothermia and injuries. As she was guided toward the medical station set up in what had once been the school's front office, Lily looked back anxiously at Ranger. "He needs to come with me," she insisted. "He's hurt too." To her surprise, Chief Harrison nodded. "She's right. That dog needs medical attention." He turned to another officer. "Call Dr. Winters. Tell her we need her expertise with a K9. The next hour passed in a blur of thermal blankets, warm drinks, and gentle examinations. Lily sat on an office chair converted to an exam table, answering the paramedics' questions while watching Dr. Winters, the town's veterinarian who had been volunteering at the shelter, examine Ranger in the corner of the room. Her parents hovered nearby, their anger gradually giving way to a reluctant understanding as Lily explained what had driven her to such a dangerous rescue mission. Mr. Porter added his own account, emphasizing how Lily's courage had saved a life that night. "She was determined to go with or without me," the old man explained. "I figured at least with me, she'd have a fighting chance." "We're still discussing consequences," Lily's father said firmly, though his hand rested gently on his daughter's shoulder. "But I'm proud of your heart, Lil, just not your methods." Dr. Winters approached, wiping her hands on a towel. Though clearly exhausted from tending to evacuated pets all day, her eyes were bright, with professional focus. "Well, considering what he's been through, Ranger's in remarkably good shape," she reported. "Dehydrated, malnourished, and some infected. Abrasions around his neck from that chain, but no life-threatening injuries. I've cleaned the wounds and started him on antibiotics." "What happens to him now?" Lily asked, voicing the question that had been weighing on her mind. Chief Harrison, who had been speaking quietly with another officer near the door, stepped forward. "Technically, Ranger is still Victor Lerner's property," he began, raising a hand to forestall Lily's immediate protest. "But given the circumstances, we have grounds for immediate seizure under animal cruelty statutes. We've already dispatched officers to check other properties owned by Lerner," added the second officer. "If there are more animals being neglected, we'll find them." Dr. Winters knelt beside Ranger, who had settled on a blanket near Lily's feet. "For tonight, he needs rest and monitoring. I'd take him to my clinic, but it's in the flood zone and evacuated." "He can stay with us?" Lily said immediately, looking imploringly at her parents. Her mother's expression was hesitant. "Honey, we're in an emergency shelter. There are rules about—" "Actually," Chief Harrison interrupted, "as Ranger's former commanding officer, I have some discretion here." He smiled slightly. "Canine officers have special status. I can designate temporary custody to appropriate caretakers in emergency situations." Lily's father raised an eyebrow. "Is that actually true, or are you bending rules for a good cause?" The chief's smile widened fractionally. "Let's just say it's a creative interpretation of department policy that no one's likely to challenge under the circumstances." And so, it was decided. Ranger would remain with Lily and her family in their corner of the gymnasium until more permanent arrangements could be made. Dr. Winters provided medication, special food, and instructions for his care. Chief Harrison promised to handle the legal paperwork to formalize the animal cruelty charges against Victor. As they walked back to their cots, Ranger padded silently beside Lily, his body still alert despite his obvious fatigue. Other evacuees watched curiously, some recognizing the former police dog and pointing, whispering his story to one another. "You're famous again," Lily whispered to him, scratching gently behind his ears. Her mother had arranged their cots to create a small private area, using hanging blankets as makeshift walls. Inside this modest sanctuary, Lily settled onto her cot with Ranger curling up on a blanket beside her. Her parents sat across from them, their expressions still processing the night's events. "You know you're grounded until you're approximately 30 years old," her father said, though the corner of his mouth twitched upward. "Worth it," Lily replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Her mother reached across the small space to smooth Lily's still damp hair. "What you did was incredibly dangerous, but also incredibly brave." Her voice caught slightly. "Just, please don't ever scare us like that again." "I promise to ask for help next time," Lily said carefully, not quite committing to never undertaking another rescue mission. Her father chuckled, recognizing the deliberate wording. "That's probably the best we're going to get." As her parents prepared for sleep, Lily lay on her side, one hand resting on Ranger's back, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. In the dim emergency lighting of the gymnasium, his eyes gleamed as he watched her, still seemingly unable to believe his change in fortune. "You're safe now," she whispered, an echo of her promise from earlier. "We're going to figure this out together." Ranger's tail thumped once against the floor, acknowledgement, agreement, gratitude, before his eyes finally closed in exhausted sleep. Dawn broke over Mill Creek Valley, revealing the full extent of the flood's devastation. The rain had finally stopped, but the river remained swollen beyond its banks, water standing in streets and fields across the valley floor. From the high school's elevated position, evacuees gathered at windows to stare at their transformed community. Familiar landmarks, now islands in a muddy lake, trees standing like sentinels in water that reached halfway up their trunks. Lily awoke to find Ranger already alert, sitting protectively at the entrance to their makeshift cubicle. When he noticed her stirring, his tail swept once across the floor in greeting. "Good morning, hero," she murmured, stretching stiff muscles. That reminded her of last night's adventure. After a simple breakfast of donated pastries and juice, Lily took Ranger outside for a short walk around the school's upper grounds, the only area still dry and accessible. The morning air was cool and surprisingly fresh after days of relentless humidity. Sunlight glinted off the floodwaters below, creating an almost beautiful scene if you could forget the destruction it represented. Dr. Winters found them there, standing at the edge of the property gazing out at the submerged town. "How's our patient this morning?" she asked, kneeling to examine Ranger's neck wounds. "He slept through the night," Lily reported, "and he ate all his breakfast." The veterinarian nodded approvingly. "Good signs. The antibiotics are working. These abrasions already look less inflamed." She stood, brushing grass from her knees. "Lily, I wanted to let you know that I've been talking with Chief Harrison. When the waters recede, my clinic will need extensive repairs before I can reopen. In the meantime, I'll be setting up a temporary practice in the community center." "Okay," Lily said, unsure why the veterinarian was sharing these details. "Doctor," Winters smiled, "what I'm saying is I could use an assistant, someone who's good with animals and isn't afraid of hard work. Chief Harrison mentioned you've volunteered at the shelter before." Lily's eyes widened. "You want me to help at your clinic? Part-time, with your parents' permission, and with one special project in particular." She nodded toward Ranger. "He'll need rehabilitation, physical and behavioral. Police K9s are extraordinary animals, but they're trained for specific environments and duties. Transitioning to civilian life isn't always easy, especially after trauma." "I can do it," Lily said immediately. "I'll help him." Dr. Winter's expression grew serious. "It won't be simple, Lily. He may have trust issues, anxiety, even occasional aggression triggered by his experiences. Are you prepared for that?" Lily considered the question carefully, looking at Ranger, who had sat attentively, seeming to understand he was the subject of their conversation. In daylight, his condition was even more apparent, ribs visible beneath his dull coat, healing scars visible on his legs, and muzzle from what must have been fights or abuse. "He never gave up," she said finally. "Even chained and drowning, he kept fighting. I won't give up on him either." Dr. Winters nodded, satisfied with the answer. "Then I think you two will do just fine together." She handed Lily a small bag of medications and supplies. "Continue with these twice daily. I'll check on him again this evening." As the veterinarian walked away, Chief Harrison approached from the direction of the parking lot, accompanied by a stern-looking woman in a business suit that seemed incongruously formal amid the disaster zone atmosphere. "Lily," the chief called, "this is Ms. Dawson from County Animal Control. She needs to ask you some questions about last night." Lily's stomach tightened with sudden anxiety. Was Ranger going to be taken away? She instinctively placed a hand on the dog's back, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Miss Dawson's expression, however, softened as she knelt to Ranger's level, allowing him to sniff her outstretched hand. "Hello, Officer Ranger," she said respectfully. I've heard a lot about you this morning." To Lily's surprise, Ranger's tail gave a cautious wag. "I need to document everything for our case against Mr. Lerner," Ms. Dawson explained, straightening, "and to officially process Ranger's change in custody status." "You're not taking him to a shelter?" Lily asked, unable to keep the worry from her voice. Ms. Dawson shook her head. "In cases involving service animals, including retired police K9s, we have special protocols. Their training and background make standard shelter placement inappropriate." She glanced at Chief Harrison. "Under the circumstances, we're expediting an emergency foster placement." Chief Harrison cleared his throat. "What Ms. Dawson means is, if your parents agree, Ranger will remain in your family's care while the legal process moves forward." Lily's heart leapt. "Really? For how long?" "Initially for 30 days, Ms. Dawson replied. "During that time, Mr. Lerner has the right to appeal, though given the evidence and circumstances, that's unlikely to succeed. After that period, assuming all goes well, we can discuss permanent adoption options." "My parents don't allow pets in our apartment," Lily said, heart sinking as quickly as it had risen. Chief Harrison exchanged a glance with Ms. Dawson. "That's another thing we wanted to discuss with you, and your parents, of course. The department has a small house we maintain for visiting officers and temporary situations. It was Officer Mercer's home before we lost him." The chief's voice grew quieter. "It's been sitting empty since then. We've been paying to maintain it, but haven't had the heart to reassign it. It's on higher ground, so it should have minimal flood damage." He paused. "Your family is welcome to use it until your apartment building is accessible again. It would give Ranger a familiar environment for his recovery." Lily stared at him, speechless with the enormity of what was being offered. "Of course this is a conversation for your parents," Ms. Dawson added quickly. "We don't want to put you in an awkward position." "There they are," Lily said, spotting her parents emerging from the school building. She waved them over, trying to contain her excitement. The conversation that followed was complex, with concerns raised and addressed on all sides. Her parents were hesitant. Taking responsibility for a traumatized former police dog was no small commitment, especially amid the chaos of flood recovery. But as Chief Harrison outlined the support that would be available, from Dr. Winters's veterinary expertise to training assistance from the K9 unit, their reservations gradually diminished. "We'd need to establish clear boundaries," Lily's mother said, her practical nature asserting itself. Rules about Ranger's care that Lily would need to follow consistently. "Absolutely," Ms. Dawson agreed. "Structure and consistency are crucial for a dog recovering from trauma. And this is temporary," her father emphasized. 30 days to start, then we reassess based on how things are going." "I understand," Lily said solemnly, willing to agree to any conditions if it meant helping Ranger. By mid-morning, paperwork was completed, arrangements were made, and Chief Harrison was driving them to Officer Mercer's former residence, a modest 2-bedroom house set on a small hill overlooking the eastern edge of town. As they approached, Lily felt Ranger stir beside her in the back seat of the police SUV, his body tensed, his nose working rapidly as familiar scents reached him. "He recognizes it," she whispered, watching his reaction carefully. The house had been closed up for months, but had weathered the flood remarkably well. The yard showed signs of minimal flooding, mud lines on the fence, debris caught in bushes, but the house itself, built on a raised foundation, appeared untouched by the waters that had devastated properties in lower-lying areas. Chief Harrison used his key to open the front door, then stepped back. "Take your time," he said softly. "This might be emotional for him." Lily's father nodded understanding. "Lily, why don't you and Ranger go in first? We'll follow in a minute." Cautiously, Lily led Ranger to the threshold. He hesitated, trembling slightly, before taking a tentative step inside. The house smelled musty from disuse, but underneath was something else, a scent memory that clearly affected the Belgian Malinois profoundly. He moved slowly from room to room, nose to the ground, occasionally looking up at corners or doorways as if expecting to see someone. In the small back bedroom, he stopped at a closet, pouring gently at the closed door. Lily opened it for him. Inside hung a spare police uniform. Ranger sat before it, his posture dignified despite his bedraggled appearance, and let out a soft whine that broke Lily's heart. "You miss him," she said quietly, kneeling beside the dog. "I know." For several minutes, they sat together in silence, a girl and a dog united by an understanding of loss that transcended words. Then, with a deep sigh that seemed to release something long held, Ranger turned away from the closet and returned to Lily's side. When they rejoined the adults in the living room, Chief Harrison was explaining the logistics of their temporary housing arrangement. Utilities were still connected, basic supplies were in the pantry, and a department credit card would cover any immediate needs until insurance and emergency assistance funds became available. "Also," he added, reaching into a small box he'd brought from his vehicle, "I thought Ranger might want these back." He held out a set of dog tags, not the ordinary kind that hung from pet collars, but the specialized identification worn by police canines. They gleamed in the sunlight streaming through the window, newly polished, but bearing the small scratches and dents of years of service. Officer James Mercer had these made when Ranger completed his training, the chief explained. Department policy was to retire them with the dog, but Victor never collected them. Lily accepted the tags reverently, running her finger over the engraved information: Ranger MVPD K9 Unit, badge, Chai 47. "Thank you," she said, understanding the significance of what she was being entrusted with. "I'll get him a new collar to put them on." As Chief Harrison prepared to leave, promising to return later with additional supplies, Lily's parents began exploring the house, discussing how to make it comfortable for their temporary stay. Lily sat on the floor of the living room, Ranger beside her, holding the dog tags in her palm where both of them could see them. "You were a hero," she told him softly, "and you will be again, just in a different way." Ranger leaned against her side, his weight solid and reassuring. In a world turned upside down by floodwaters, in lives disrupted by loss and change, they had found each other. Not a replacement for what either had lost, but something new, a connection formed in crisis, strengthened by trust, and now opening toward possibility. Outside, the waters had begun their slow retreat from Mill Creek Valley. Inside, in a house filled with memories of the past, the first cautious steps toward a new future were being taken, one girl, one dog, one moment of courage at a time. The days following the flood blended together in a blur of recovery efforts. Throughout Mill Creek Valley, families returned to mud-caked homes, volunteers distributed supplies, and the constant hum of pumps and generators formed a mechanical backdrop to the community's resilience. For Lily and Ranger, a new routine emerged in Officer Mercer's house on the hill. Each morning began with medication for Ranger's wounds, followed by gentle exercise in the backyard. Nothing strenuous, as Dr. Winters had cautioned against overexertion during his recovery. Lily's father had repaired the fence where floodwaters had damaged it, creating a secure space where Ranger could move freely without his leash. The transformation in the Belgian Malinois was remarkable. With proper nutrition, his ribs became less prominent beneath his coat, which was beginning to regain its natural sheen. The infected wounds around his neck healed, leaving only faint scarring as a reminder of his ordeal. Most striking was the change in his eyes, the dull resignation replaced by alert intelligence and growing trust. On their fifth day in the house, a delivery truck navigated the still partially flooded streets to bring a package from the police department. A new tactical collar, similar to the one Ranger had worn during his service years, but with a special addition, a custom nameplate that read Ranger, Hero of Mill Creek Valley. It was Chief Harrison's idea, explained the officer who delivered it. The whole department chipped in. Lily carefully attached Ranger's original K9 tags to the new collar, then knelt before him to secure it around his neck. Unlike Victor's heavy chain, this collar was designed for comfort and functionality, with padding where it touched his healing skin. "What do you think?" she asked, stepping back to admire how distinguished he looked. Ranger sat tall, as if suddenly remembering his training and purpose. When he moved to the hallway mirror, a behavior that surprised everyone, he studied his own reflection with what could only be described as dignified approval. Lily's mother, watching from the kitchen doorway, laughed softly. "I swear that dog understands every word we say." "K9s are special," Lily's father replied, having developed his own growing appreciation for Ranger's intelligence. "Officer Mercer once told me they're not just trained, they're educated. There's a difference." That afternoon, Dr. Winters arrived for Ranger's checkup, bringing news from town along with medical supplies. "The community center is almost ready," she reported as she examined Ranger's healing neck. "We should be able to open the temporary clinic by Monday." "Has there been any word about Victor?" Lily asked, the question that had lingered at the edges of her thoughts since the rescue. Dr. Winters exchanged a glance with Lily's parents before answering carefully. "He's been located at his brother's property in the next county. The sheriff served him with the animal cruelty charges yesterday." Something in her tone made Lily look up sharply. "What did he say?" "That's not for you to worry about, sweetheart," her mother interjected gently. "I deserve to know," Lily insisted. "Ranger deserves to know." After a moment's hesitation, Dr. Winters nodded. "He's contesting the charges, claims he left adequate shelter and food for Ranger, and that the flood came faster than expected." Lily's hands clenched into fists. "That's a lie. There was no shelter, no food." "We know," her father said, placing a calming hand on her shoulder. "And we have witnesses. Mr. Porter, the emergency responders who saw Ranger's condition. Victor won't win this fight." Despite these reassurances, a shadow seemed to fall over the house. Ranger sensed the tension, pressing closer to Lily's side, his body alert, as if prepared to protect her from an unseen threat. "I have good news too," Dr. Winters said, deliberately changing the subject. "Chief Harrison contacted Ranger's original trainer from the police academy. He's retired now, but still works with K9s occasionally. He's offered to help with Ranger's rehabilitation." This brightened Lily's mood considerably. "When can we meet him?" "He's coming tomorrow. His name is Michael Torres. He worked with Ranger and Officer Mercer during their initial training period." Dr. Winters closed her medical kit. "He has a special interest in helping service dogs transition to civilian life." That night, Lily lay awake long after her parents had gone to bed, staring at the ceiling of what had once been Officer Mercer's guest room. Ranger lay on his bed beside her, a proper orthopedic dog bed donated by one of Dr. Winters' clients. In the moonlight filtering through the curtains, she could see he was awake too, his eyes reflecting a soft glow. "We won't let him take you back," she whispered, reaching down to touch his head gently. "I promise." Ranger's tail thumped against the cushion once, twice, his own way of making promises in return. Morning brought sunshine and the arrival of Michael Torres, a compact man in his 60s with close-cropped grey hair and the deliberate movements of someone accustomed to working with animals. He greeted Lily's parents politely, but focused immediately on Ranger, who had appeared in the hallway at the sound of the unfamiliar voice. The Belgian Malinois froze, his entire body rigid with recognition. Then, to everyone's astonishment, He lowered himself to the ground in a perfect formal downstay, a trained response to a trainer he had not seen in years. Torres knelt slowly, his weathered face breaking into a wide smile. "Well, look at you," he said softly. "Still remember your basics, don't you, boy?" He looked up at the family. "May I?" At their nods, he approached Ranger slowly, speaking in a low, calm voice, part English, part specific command words that meant nothing to Lily, but clearly resonated with Ranger. The dog remained perfectly still until Torres gave a subtle hand, a signal releasing him from the position. Immediately, Ranger moved forward, sniffing Torres thoroughly before giving his hand a quick lick, a gesture of recognition and respect. "He remembers me," Torres said, obvious pleasure in his voice. "That's excellent. Memory retention is a good sign after trauma." The trainer spent the morning observing Ranger, his movements, responses, and interactions with the family. He watched how Ranger followed Lily from room to room, how he responded to different tones of voice, how he navigated the house and yard. "I'm impressed," he told them as they shared lunch on the back porch. "Given what he's been through, I expected more behavioral issues. Anxiety, perhaps aggression triggers, definitely trust problems." "He does have some," Lily said honestly. "He won't eat unless I'm in the room, and he barks at men wearing baseball caps." Torres nodded thoughtfully. "Victor Lerner wore caps, I'm guessing." "Always," confirmed Lily's father. "Even saw him in court once. Tried to wear one there too until the judge made him remove it." "Specific triggers like that we can work with," Torres explained. The fact that he's not generally reactive is remarkable. It speaks to his fundamental temperament and training, but also, he glanced at Lily, to the quality of care he's receiving now. After lunch, Torres suggested beginning some basic retraining exercises. "Nothing strenuous," he assured Dr. Winters, who had arrived to observe. "Just enough to re-establish positive associations with commands and rebuild his confidence." The backyard, Torres demonstrated simple exercises that Lily could practice daily with Ranger. Basic obedience commands, but with a focus on positive reinforcement rather than the more demanding standards of police work. He was trained to perform under extreme pressure, Torres explained. That's not what he needs now. He needs to learn that responses can be rewarded, not just expected. Lily proved to be a natural handler. Her patience and gentle persistence brought out the best in Ranger, who seemed eager to please her. By the end of the session, they had established a solid foundation for ongoing training. "You have good instincts," Torres told Lily as they packed up the training equipment. "Ranger responds well to you." "When will you come back?" she asked, already looking forward to learning more. "Twice a week to start," he said, "but your daily practice is what will make the real difference." As Torres prepared to leave, he took Lily's parents aside for a private conversation on the front porch. Lily remained in the living room with Ranger, but could catch fragments of their discussion through the open window. "Legal proceedings might be complicated," Torres was saying. "Think Victor actually has a chance?" Her father's voice, concerned. "Depends on the judge. Small towns, personal connections." Lily's stomach tightened with anxiety. The adults were worried, which meant there was genuine reason for concern. She buried her fingers in Ranger's fur, drawing comfort from his solid presence beside her. When her parents returned inside, their expressions were carefully neutral. "Everything okay?" Lily asked, unable to hide her worry. "Just grown-up business details," her mother said with forced lightness. "Nothing for you to worry about." But later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, she overheard her parents talking in low voices in the kitchen. "Hearing is set for next Tuesday," her father was saying. "Victor's lawyer is arguing that the seizure was illegal because Lily trespassed on his property." "That's ridiculous," her mother replied. "She was saving Ranger's life during a natural disaster." "I know, but apparently Victor's brother is friends with Judge Harlow. Torres is concerned there might be hometown politics at play." Lily lay very still, processing this information. The thought of Ranger being returned to Victor was unbearable. She would run away with him first, hide somewhere Victor would never find them. Her mind raced with half-formed plans of escape. Beside her bed, Ranger stirred, sensing her distress. He rose and placed his head on the edge of her mattress, eyes concerned in the darkness. "It's okay," she whispered, not believing her own words. "We'll figure something out." The following days took on a strange dual quality. Joy in Ranger's continuing recovery and growing bond with the family, shadowed by anxiety about the upcoming hearing. Lily threw herself into their training sessions with Torres, as if perfect. Obedience might somehow protect Ranger from legal proceedings. On Saturday morning, Chief Harrison visited, bringing coffee for the adults and news of town recovery efforts. "The community center's almost ready," he reported. "Power's been restored to most of downtown. Schools still delayed another week while they finish repairs." Lily sat quietly on the couch, Ranger at her feet, listening as the adults discussed flood insurance claims and rebuilding timelines. She waited patiently for what she knew would be the real purpose of the chief's visit. Finally, her father asked directly, "Any updates on Victor's case?" Harrison's expression grew serious. "That's actually why I came by. Judge Harlow recused himself yesterday." "Recused?" Lily's mother repeated. "What does that mean?" "It means he's removed himself from the case due to potential conflict of interest," Harrison explained. "The hearing will now be before Judge Watkins from the county seat." Lily's father let out a relieved breath. "That's good news, right? Watkins doesn't have local connections?" "She's known for being fair and by the book," Harrison confirmed. "And there's more. We've located 2 other families who adopted dogs from Victor's unlicensed breeding operation. Both animals were in terrible condition, and both families are willing to testify about it." "So, the case is stronger now," Lily's mother said. Hope evident in her voice. "Much stronger," Harrison agreed. "It's no longer just about Ranger. The county is building a pattern of behavior case against Victor for animal cruelty." Ranger, who had been listening attentively to the conversation, stood and moved to Harrison's side, nudging the chief's hand with his nose. "Look at that," Harrison said softly, scratching behind Ranger's ears. "He knows we're talking about him." "He always does," Lily said with quiet pride. Harrison stayed for lunch, sharing stories of Ranger's service, years with the police department, how he had found a lost child in the state park, tracked down a suspect who had fled into the industrial district, located crucial evidence in a burglary case. With each story, Ranger seemed to sit a little taller, as if reconnecting with his proud history. "He was one of our best," Harrison said. "It nearly broke the unit when Officer Mercer died. We all assumed Ranger would be placed with another handler, but Victor moved so quickly with the adoption paperwork. By the time we realized what was happening, it was already done." "Why would Victor even want him?" Lily asked, the question that had bothered her from the beginning. "He obviously didn't care about Ranger." Harrison's expression darkened. "We believe he was using Ranger for breeding. Belgian Malinois puppies with police training lineage can sell for thousands." Lily looked at Ranger with new understanding of what he had endured. "That's why he has those scars on his legs and face. He was fighting with other dogs." "Most likely," Harrison confirmed, "but that's over now." After the chief left, Lily took Ranger for their afternoon training session in the backyard. She had been working on a special sequence of commands that Torres had taught them. Not police work, but something more suited to Ranger's new life. It combined obedience elements with gentle play, designed to build trust and positive associations. As they finished the routine, Lily noticed her parents watching from the porch steps. "You two are really something together," her father said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Torres says Ranger has a new purpose now," Lily explained, tossing a soft training toy for Ranger to retrieve. "He says service dogs need to feel useful even in retirement." "And what is his new purpose?" her mother asked. Lily caught her father's eye, seeing understanding there before she even answered. "Healing," she said simply. "Both of us." That evening, as dusk settled over Mill Creek Valley, Lily sat on the front porch swing with her mother, watching fireflies begin their nightly dance over the yard. Ranger lay at their feet, his body relaxed but eyes alert, ever the guardian. "Mom," Lily said carefully, "what happens after the hearing, if we win?" Her mother was quiet for a moment, gently pushing the swing with one foot. "What are you really asking, sweetheart? Can we keep him?" The question emerged in a rush of emotion. "Even after we go back to the apartment?" Her mother sighed softly. "Your father and I have been talking about that. The apartment complex has strict rules about pets, especially large dogs." Lily's heart sank, though the answer wasn't unexpected. "But," her mother continued, "we've also been talking with the property manager. Given Ranger's status as a retired police K9, there might be an exception possible under service animal provisions." Hope bloomed in Lily's chest. "Really? It's not guaranteed," her mother cautioned, "and there would need to be conditions, special training, certification that he's properly rehabilitated. It would take commitment from all of us." "We can do it," Lily said immediately. "I'll work with Torres every day. I'll do whatever it takes." Her mother smiled, brushing Lily's hair back from her face. "I know you will, and that's why Dad and I are even considering this. You've shown us something we didn't fully appreciate before." "What's that?" "That sometimes the most important things in life aren't planned. They come to us unexpectedly, through acts of courage and moments of choice." She looked down at Ranger, who had raised his head at the mention of his name. "You chose to save him when others wouldn't. That kind of choice changes things, changes us." Lily absorbed these words, feeling their truth resonate deeply. "He saved me too," she said quietly. "I was always so afraid of everything, afraid to speak up in class, afraid to try out for teams. But that night, with the flood, I wasn't afraid. I just knew what I had to do." "That's called finding your purpose," her mother said. "Some people search their whole lives and never find it." As darkness settled completely, they moved inside where Lily's father had prepared a simple dinner. The house felt different now, no longer just a temporary shelter, but a place where important things were happening, where lives were being transformed. After dinner, as Lily was helping with dishes, her father received a phone call that took him into the living room for privacy. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. "That was Michael Torres," he said. "Victor's lawyer has made a new filing with the court. They're requesting an immediate return of property hearing, basically trying to get Ranger back before the main animal cruelty case is decided." "They can't do that," Lily protested, dish towel clutched tightly in her hands. "They can try," her father said, his voice carefully controlled. "Torres is connecting us with a pro bono attorney who specializes in animal rights cases. She'll meet us at the community center tomorrow." "But why now?" Lily's mother asked. What's changed?" According to Torres, Victor's brother bragged at a local bar about having a buyer lined up for Ranger, someone from out of state willing to pay top dollar for a trained police dog. Her father's disgust was evident. "They're treating him like property to be sold." Ranger, who had been lying peacefully in his corner bed, rose at the tension in the room. He moved to Lily's side, pressing against her leg, as if offering support. "He's not property," Lily said, her voice breaking slightly. "He's family." Her father knelt to meet her eyes. "Yes, he is, and we're going to fight for our family, Lily, all of us, together." As they prepared for bed that night, the atmosphere in the house was charged with determination. What had begun as a temporary arrangement, an emergency rescue, had evolved into something far more significant. A stand for justice, for compassion, for the bond between a girl and a dog that transcended legal definitions of ownership. In her room, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor beside Ranger's bed, her hand resting gently on his back. "Do you remember the night of the flood?" she asked softly. "When I promised you'd be safe?" Ranger's eyes, intelligent and trusting, remained fixed on her face. "I'm keeping that promise," she told him, "no matter what." In the quiet darkness of what had once been Officer Mercer's house, now transformed by new love and purpose, girl and dog sat together, not just survivor and rescued, but partners in a journey neither could have imagined before the floodwaters rose. Outside, the repaired town of Mill Creek Valley was slowly finding its way back to normalcy. Inside, a different kind of reconstruction was taking place. The building of a bond that would face its greatest test in the days to come. The community center had been transformed. Once a simple gathering space for town events, it now buzzed with activity as relief workers, insurance adjusters, and displaced residents navigated its repurposed rooms. What had been a crafts area was now Dr. Winters's temporary veterinary clinic. The senior center lounge had become a legal aid office. The main hall served as both distribution point for supplies and impromptu town meeting space. Lily, her parents and Ranger made their way through this organized chaos, following Chief Harrison's directions to a small conference room in the back. Ranger walked perfectly at Lily's side, his police training evident in his alert posture and disciplined pace. He wore his new collar proudly, the tags catching morning light from the high windows. "That must be her," Lily's father said, nodding toward a woman arranging papers at the far end of the conference room. Jessica Mendoza didn't match Lily's mental image of a lawyer. Instead of a severe suit, she wore jeans and a casual blazer. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and when she looked up at their entrance, her smile was warm and genuine. "You must be the Chen family," she said, rising to greet them. Her eyes immediately went to Ranger. "And this is our client." The term surprised Lily. "Ranger is your client, not us?" "That's right," Mendoza confirmed, kneeling to allow Ranger to sniff her hand before she gently examined his healing neck. "In animal rights cases, I consider the animal my primary client. You're his advocates, his voice in the legal system." There was something profoundly reassuring about this perspective. Lily relaxed slightly as they settled around the conference table, Ranger lying attentively at her feet. "Let me explain where we stand," Mendoza began, her voice taking on a more professional tone. "Victor Lerner has filed an emergency motion for return of property, claiming Ranger was illegally seized during the flood. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. "That's so fast," Lily's mother said, concern evident in her voice. Mendoza nodded. "These property return motions can move quickly in the court system, but we have several strong arguments in our favor." She ticked them off on her fingers. First, Ranger was rescued during a declared emergency. When normal, property protections are superseded by life-saving imperatives. Second, we have documented evidence of neglect and cruelty that justified the emergency seizure. Third, Ranger's status as a former police K-9 grants him special consideration in many jurisdictions. "Do we need to testify?" Lily asked, the thought of facing Victor in court sending a chill through her. "You might," Mendoza said gently. "As the person who found Ranger in those conditions, your first-hand account is powerful evidence. But I'll do everything possible to shield you from any aggressive questioning." Lily nodded, steeling herself. If speaking up would help protect Ranger, she would find the courage. "There's something else you should know," Mendoza continued, her expression growing more serious. "Victor's attorney is arguing that since the flood was an act of God, his client couldn't have anticipated the danger to Ranger. He's trying to frame this as an unfortunate situation rather than deliberate neglect." "That's ridiculous," Lily's father protested. "Everyone had days of warning about the flood. The entire town evacuated." "Exactly the point we'll make," Mendoza agreed, along with the fact that Ranger was chained with no access to higher ground, no shelter, and no food or water left for him. As they discussed strategy for the hearing, Lily found her attention drifting to Ranger. He lay calmly at her feet, but his eyes remained fixed on the door of the conference room as if expecting someone to enter. Every few minutes, his ears would prick forward at a passing voice or footstep. "He seems anxious," she whispered to her mother. Before her mother could respond, the conference room door opened. Michael Torres entered, followed by a slender woman in her 40s with short graying hair and kind eyes. "Sorry we're late," Torres said. "Traffic is still a mess downtown." Ranger immediately stood, his posture attentive but relaxed, clearly recognizing Torres as a friend. "This is Sarah Mercer," Torres introduced the woman, "Officer James Mercer's sister." A hush fell over the room. Lily stared at the woman, suddenly understanding Ranger's alertness. He had been sensing a familiar presence, someone connected to his original handler. Sarah Mercer moved slowly into the room, her eyes fixed on Ranger. "Oh, look at you," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "You remember me, don't you, boy?" Ranger took a step forward, then looked back at Lily as if seeking permission. When she nodded, he moved to Sarah's side, pressing his body against her leg in a gesture of recognition and affection. "James would be so grateful," Sarah said, kneeling to embrace the dog. "So grateful that you found him," she added, looking up at Lily with tear-filled eyes. "I didn't know Officer Mercer had a sister," Lily said. "I've been living out of state," Sarah explained, still stroking Ranger's head. "I was in Europe when James died, teaching English. By the time I got back, Victor had already claimed Ranger." Her expression darkened. "My cousin never even called to ask if I wanted to take him." Mendoza watched this reunion with keen interest. "Miss Mercer, would you be willing to testify at tomorrow's hearing?" "That's why I'm here," Sarah confirmed, straightening. "Michael called me last week when this all started. I've been driving back from Colorado ever since." "This could change everything," Mendoza said, excitement creeping into her professional demeanor. "As the sister of Ranger's handler, you have a compelling claim to family connection that a court would recognize, much stronger than a cousin who clearly demonstrated no genuine bond with the animal." The attorney quickly adjusted their strategy, incorporating Sarah's testimony and her willingness to provide Ranger a permanent home if the Chens couldn't keep him in their apartment. This fallback option strengthened their case considerably, offering the judge an alternative to returning Ranger to Victor. As the meeting concluded, Lily felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that Sarah's arrival had bolstered their case, happiness that Ranger had reconnected with someone from his past life, but also a pang of sadness at the thought of potentially losing him to a new home. "Can I ask you something?" she said to Sarah as they walked together toward the community center exit. "Of course," Sarah replied. "If you take Ranger, could I still visit him sometimes?" Sarah's expression softened. "Oh, Lily." She knelt to meet the girl's eyes directly. "I don't want to take Ranger from you. I came to support your family's claim to him. If the judge rules in our favor, we can work out whatever arrangement is best for him, and for you." The sincerity in her voice eased some of Lily's anxiety. "Thank you." They parted ways outside the community center, agreeing to meet early the next morning before the hearing. As Lily and her family drove back to Officer Mercer's house, the atmosphere in the car was cautiously optimistic. "Miss Mendoza seems really good at her job," Lily's father observed. "And Sarah Mercer's testimony will help tremendously," her mother added. "I have a good feeling about this." Lily gazed out the window at the town, still bearing the mud lines and debris of the flood. Like Ranger's scars, these marks would fade, with time, but never completely disappear, a reminder of what had been endured and overcome. The remainder of the day passed in careful preparation. Lily's mother pressed their best clothes for court. Her father reviewed the timeline of events, repeatedly, ensuring his account would be clear and accurate if called to testify. Lily sat in the backyard with Ranger, running through Torres' training exercises not just for his benefit, but to calm her own nerves. When evening came, a surprise visitor arrived, Dr. Winters, carrying not only Ranger's medication, but also a small cake. "A little pre-victory celebration," she explained, setting it on the kitchen counter. "Regardless of what happens tomorrow, you've already won the most important battle. You saved his life." The simple gathering turned into an impromptu strategy session. Dr. Winters offered her professional assessment of Ranger's improved condition, documenting it with photographs that showed the stark contrast between his state at rescue and his current health. These would serve as powerful evidence in court. After Dr. Winters left, the family settled into a quiet evening routine. Lily took extra time brushing Ranger's coat until it gleamed, then polishing his service tags until they shone like new. "You look like the hero you are," she told him, adjusting his collar one final time. That night, sleep proved elusive. Lily tossed and turned, her mind racing with worries about the hearing. What if Victor convinced the judge? What if the law somehow failed to protect Ranger? What if tomorrow ended with him being dragged away from her? As if sensing her distress, Ranger abandoned his bed on the floor and hopped up beside her, settling, his weight against her side in silent reassurance. The familiar rhythm of his breathing eventually lulled her into an uneasy sleep. Morning arrived all too quickly. Breakfast was a quiet affair, tension hanging in the air like a physical presence. Lily picked at her toast, too nervous to eat properly. Even Ranger seemed to understand the significance of the day, his usual morning enthusiasm tempered by an unusual stillness. The county courthouse stood on a hill above the main town square, its imposing limestone facade and broad steps designed to convey the seriousness of the proceedings within. As Lily's family approached, they spotted Torres, Sarah Mercer, and Attorney Mendoza waiting near the entrance. "Ready?" Mendoza asked, her professional demeanor firmly in place. Before anyone could answer, a truck pulled into the parking lot, Victor's familiar pickup. Lily instinctively moved closer to Ranger, who had gone rigid at the sight of his former owner. Victor emerged from the vehicle, accompanied by a man in an ill-fitting suit, who Lily assumed was his attorney. Victor's eyes locked onto Ranger, then narrowed with clear hostility as they shifted to Lily. Before he could approach, Chief Harrison arrived, positioning himself subtly between the two parties. "Let's head inside," he suggested, his hand resting lightly on his service belt in a casual reminder of his authority. The courtroom was smaller than Lily had imagined, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. They settled on one side, Victor and his attorney on the other. Several officers from the police department had arrived in uniform, sitting directly behind Lily's family in a show of solidarity. When Judge Watkins entered, a stern-faced woman with silver-streaked hair and piercing eyes, the courtroom rose, then settled back into tense silence. "This is a hearing on emergency motion for return of property," the judge began, scanning the documents before her. "Case number 2025 CV 4387, Lerner versus Mill Creek Valley Animal Control." She looked up, her gaze moving between the parties. I see we have quite a gathering today for what should be a straightforward property matter. Victor's attorney stood. Your Honor, this is indeed straightforward. My client's property, a valuable trained dog, was taken without due process. During the recent flood, we're simply asking the court to order its immediate return, while any secondary matters regarding alleged care issues proceed through normal channels. Mendoza rose smoothly in response. Your Honor, we contest the framing of this case as a simple property matter. The property in question is a living being, specifically a former police canine officer with special status under County Code 47, 3B. Furthermore, the seizure occurred under emergency disaster declarations that supersede normal property protections when life is at risk. Judge Watkins glanced down at Ranger, who sat perfectly at attention beside Lily's chair. I see the animal in question is present. Unusual, but not inappropriate given the circumstances. She made a notation on her legal pad. I'll hear testimony, beginning with the petitioner. Victor took the stand first, painting a picture of himself as a responsible owner caught in unfortunate circumstances. He claimed he had left Ranger with adequate shelter and food, intending to return as soon as the floodwaters receded, but was prevented by road closures. His attorney guided him through carefully worded questions designed to minimize his culpability. When Mendoza's turn for cross-examination came, her approach was surgical and devastating. Mr. Lerner, did you receive the mandatory evacuation orders issued 3 days before the flood crested? Yes, but a simple yes is sufficient, Mendoza interrupted. And did those orders specifically state that all residents should evacuate? With their pets and livestock? Victor shifted uncomfortably. I don't recall specific. Your Honor, I have the official emergency declaration here, with that exact language highlighted, Mendoza said, approaching the bench with the document. Question by question, she dismantled Victor's narrative, exposing inconsistencies and contradictions. By the time she finished, his claim of responsible ownership lay in tatters. Next came testimony from Mr. Porter, who described finding Ranger chained without shelter as the porch was actively collapsing. Dr. Winters followed, presenting her medical assessment of Ranger's condition immediately post-rescue. The infections, the malnutrition, the evidence of previous injuries consistent with fighting. When it was Lily's turn, she approached the witness stand with trembling legs but determination in her heart. Mendoza guided her gently through her account of the night of the flood, her concern for Ranger, the dangerous rescue, the condition in which she found him. And why did you risk your own safety during a flood emergency to help this dog? Mendoza asked. Lily took a deep breath, her eyes finding Ranger across the courtroom. Because he deserved better, she said simply. He spent his life protecting people. Someone needed to protect him. Victor's attorney declined to cross-examine her, perhaps recognizing that challenging a child who had performed an act of courage would only damage their case further. Chief Harrison testified about Ranger's service record and the department's concerns about his treatment under Victor's care. Torres explained the specialized training and value of police canines and the proper protocols for their retirement. Finally, Sarah Mercer took the stand, her testimony perhaps the most powerful of all. My brother James worked with Ranger for 5 years, she explained, emotion evident in her measured voice. They were inseparable. James always said that when he retired, Ranger would retire with him to a little house in the country. She paused, composing herself. After James died, I was overseas. By the time I returned, I discovered Victor, our cousin, had already claimed Ranger, using a distant family connection to override what James would have wanted. And what would Officer Mercer have wanted for his K-9 partner? Mendoza asked. Sarah looked directly at Victor. Not this. Never this. James would be heartbroken to know Ranger was chained outside, used for breeding, and ultimately abandoned to drown. Throughout the testimony, Ranger remained calm beside Lily, though his attention never wavered from the proceedings. It was almost as if he understood that his future hung in the balance of these human deliberations. After Sarah's testimony concluded, Judge Watkins called a brief recess to review the evidence. The 20 minutes she was gone felt like hours to Lily, who sat stroking Ranger's ears and whispering reassurances that she only half believed herself. When the judge returned, the courtroom fell into expectant silence. This case presents several interesting legal questions, Judge Watkins began, about the nature of property rights during declared emergencies, about the special status of service animals, and about where the best interests of the animal should factor into the court's decision. She adjusted her glasses, but at its core, this case is about responsibility, who exercised it and who abdicated it. She looked directly at Victor. Mr. Lerner, the evidence clearly shows that you left this animal chained in life-threatening conditions, despite ample warning and opportunity to evacuate him safely. This court finds that such actions constitute abandonment under the law, which terminates property rights. Lily's heart soared. Beside her, her mother grabbed her hand, squeezing tightly. Furthermore, the judge continued, given the animal's history as a police service K9, his welfare falls under special provisions of county code that prioritize proper care and treatment. She shuffled her papers. The emergency motion for return of property is denied. Custody of the K9 known as Ranger will remain with Mill Creek Valley Animal Control for placement in an appropriate home, with strong consideration given to the Chen family who rescued him and have demonstrated exceptional care during his recovery. Victor slammed his hand on the table, rising halfway before his attorney pulled him back down, whispering urgently in his ear. Additionally, Judge Watkins said, her voice sharpening, this court is referring the evidence presented today to the district attorney's office for potential criminal animal cruelty charges. We're adjourned. The gavel came down with a decisive crack that seemed to echo through Lily's entire body. They had won. Ranger was safe. As people began filing out of the courtroom, Victor stormed toward the exit, pausing only to cast a venomous glare in Lily's direction. This isn't over, he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. Chief Harrison stepped smoothly into his path. Actually, Lerner, I think it is. And I'd advise you to stay well away from the Chen family and Ranger from now on. Outside the courthouse, beneath a sky that had finally cleared to perfect blue, the celebration was subdued but heartfelt. Dr. Winters hugged Lily tightly. Torres shook hands all around. Sarah Mercer knelt to press her forehead briefly against Ranger's, whispering something that made his tail wag enthusiastically. What happens now? Lily asked Mendoza, who was gathering her papers into a sleek briefcase. Now comes the paperwork, the attorney said with a smile. Formal adoption, registration, certification that Ranger has been properly rehabilitated. For civilian life, but the hard part is over. Chief Harrison approached, his expression thoughtful. I've been talking with the department. We'd like to make Ranger an honorary canine ambassador for our community outreach program. He could visit schools, nursing homes, community events, with you as his handler, Lily. Me? She asked, eyes widening. But I'm just a kid who showed more courage and compassion than most adults I know, the chief replied. Besides, Torres says you've got a natural talent with him. Lily looked at her parents, seeking their reaction to this unexpected proposal. Her father nodded slowly. It would be a big responsibility, but you've already proven you're up to big responsibilities. And it would help with the apartment situation, her mother added practically. Service dogs with official duties have different accommodation requirements under housing laws. As the adults discussed logistics, Lily knelt beside Ranger, who sat watching the courthouse steps as if standing guard. "What do you think?" she asked him softly. "Ready for a new mission?" Ranger turned to meet her eyes, his gaze steady and clear. No longer the frightened animal she had found chained to a collapsing porch, but a dignified partner ready for whatever came next. In the midst of their quiet communication, a small commotion drew their attention. A news van had pulled up, and a reporter was approaching with a cameraman in tow. "Excuse me," the reporter called. "Are you the family who rescued the police dog during the flood? We'd love to get your story for our Heroes Among Us segment." Lily hesitated, uncomfortable with the sudden attention, but Chief Harrison stepped forward. "This is indeed Ranger," he confirmed, "and this is Lily Chen, who risked her own safety to save him when others wouldn't." The reporter smiled warmly. "Would you mind telling us what happened that night? Your story could inspire others to act when they see animals in danger." Lily thought about this, about other animals who might be suffering as Ranger had, about other people who might be hesitating to help because they thought they were too young or too powerless to make a difference. She nodded slowly. "Okay, but it's not just my story, it's Ranger's too." As the camera began recording, Lily found the words coming more easily than she expected. She told of the night of the flood, of the desperate rescue, of the bond that had formed between them since. With each word, she grew more confident, more certain that sharing their journey might help others find the courage to act when needed. Most. Beside her, Ranger sat tall and proud, his new collar gleaming in the sunlight, no longer a prisoner of neglect and cruelty, but a symbol of resilience and second chances. What had begun in crisis? A girl in a small boat facing rising waters, a dog chained and abandoned, had transformed into something powerful and enduring. Not just a rescue, but a reminder that courage comes in all sizes, that family can be formed in unexpected moments, and that sometimes the most important decision we ever make is simply to not look away when others suffer. As the interview concluded, Lily and Ranger walked down the courthouse steps together, heading toward home, not just the temporary shelter of Officer Mercer's house, but the permanent home they would create together, wherever that might be. The flood waters had receded from Mill Creek Valley, leaving behind mud and debris that would take months to clear. But they had also revealed something precious, the foundations of compassion and courage that would rebuild not just buildings, but lives and hearts. Ranger walked steadily at Lily's side, his steps perfectly matched to hers, no longer chained to a drowning house, but bound by something far stronger and more beautiful. The unbreakable connection between two souls who had found each other precisely when they needed one another most. 2 weeks after the courthouse victory, Mill Creek Valley was slowly transforming. The mud had hardened and been cleared from most streets. Businesses downtown had reopened, their freshly scrubbed storefronts proudly displaying "Open After Flood" signs. Schools were scheduled to resume classes the following Monday. Throughout town, the persistent hum of dehumidifiers and the tang of bleach marked ongoing recovery efforts. But there was a palpable sense of a corner turned, of forward momentum. For Lily and Ranger, life had acquired a new rhythm. Each morning began with training exercises in the backyard of Officer Mercer's house, which the police department had formally offered to rent to the Chen family at a nominal fee while their apartment building underwent repairs. Torres visited 3 times a week, expanding Ranger's repertoire beyond his police training to include therapy dog commands and public interaction skills. "Excellent," Torres praised, as Ranger perfectly executed a series of movements designed to navigate crowded spaces safely. "He's taking to this new training remarkably well." "He likes having a job again," Lily said, rewarding Ranger with his favorite toy, a soft purple octopus that squeaked when squeezed. It had been a gift from Sarah Mercer, who had discovered it was identical to a toy Officer Mercer had once given Ranger during his service years. After training came Lily's newly established responsibilities at Dr. Winter's temporary clinic. 3 mornings a week, she assisted with basic tasks, cleaning cages, organizing supplies, comforting animals awaiting treatment. Ranger accompanied her, his calm presence soothing to the other animals, many of whom were still traumatized from the flood. "You have a gift," Dr. Winters told her as they finished morning rounds. "The way you connect with animals, the way they trust you, it's not something that can be taught." Lily smiled, watching as Ranger gently nosed a nervous cat in its carrier, somehow communicating that all was well in a language that transcended species. "I think they just know when someone actually sees them," she said thoughtfully, "really sees them, not just what they can do or how they look." The veterinarian nodded, understanding the depth of wisdom in the young girl's observation. "That's exactly it, and it's rarer than you might think." This particular morning was special, Ranger's final checkup before being officially cleared for his new duties as a canine ambassador. Dr. Winters examined him thoroughly, documenting his remarkable recovery with photographs and detailed notes. "The physical transformation is extraordinary," she said, comparing current images with those taken immediately after his rescue. "But what's even more impressive is his psychological resilience. Many dogs don't recover from trauma like his without long-term behavioral issues." "He still has nightmares sometimes," Lily admitted, recalling the nights when Ranger would wake whimpering, his legs churning as if running in his sleep. "And he gets nervous around men who look like Victor." "That's to be expected," Dr. Winters reassured her. "Healing isn't linear, and it isn't about erasing the past. It's about building something new alongside it." She completed her examination with satisfied nods. "He's ready, Lily. You both are." Outside the clinic, Lily checked her phone to find a text from her mother. "Meeting with apartment manager at 2 p.m. Fingers crossed." The text sent a flutter of anxiety through her chest. Despite the judge's ruling in their favor and Chief Harrison's offer to designate Ranger as an official K9 ambassador, there remained the practical reality of their housing situation. The apartment building where they had lived before the flood had strict no pets policies, with limited exceptions for certified service animals. Whether Ranger's new status would qualify was the final hurdle they faced. For now, though, there were more immediate concerns. Chief Harrison had arranged Ranger's first official appearance as an ambassador for later that afternoon. A visit to the elementary school, where children would be returning to classes on Monday. The purpose was twofold: to help the children process their flood experiences through interaction with a hero dog, and to educate them about animal welfare and rescue. Lily and Ranger arrived at the school to find a colorful welcome banner stretched across the entrance. "Thank you, Ranger and Lily, our hometown heroes." Inside the gymnasium, nearly 200 children sat cross-legged on the floor, their excited whispers filling the air. Teachers stood at the perimeter, many holding smartphones ready to capture the moment. At the far end, a small stage had been set up with a microphone and chairs. Principal Garcia greeted them warmly. "The children have been talking about nothing else all morning," she said. "After everything they've been through with the flood, this is exactly what they need, a story with a happy ending." Chief Harrison arrived moments later, dressed in his formal uniform. "Ready for your debut?" he asked Lily with an encouraging smile. She nodded, though butterflies danced in her stomach. Public speaking had always terrified her. Before the flood, she would have rather done anything than address a crowd this size. But something had changed inside her that night on the floodwaters. If she could face that, she reasoned, she could face a gymnasium of curious children. Principal Garcia called for attention, and the excited chatter gradually subsided. She introduced Chief Harrison, who spoke briefly about the police department's commitment to the community during times of crisis. Then, with a warm smile, he turned to introduce Lily and Ranger. As they stepped forward, a wave of awed whispers swept through the young audience. Ranger walked perfectly at Lily's side, his posture dignified but approachable. He wore his special collar with the custom nameplate, and for this occasion, a blue bandana with the police department logo that designated him as an official K9 ambassador. Lily took a deep breath and began the story they had practiced, a simplified version of Ranger's rescue, appropriate for young listeners. She described the rising floodwaters, the danger Ranger had faced, and how sometimes doing the right thing means being brave, even when you're scared. Ranger was a police dog before the flood, she explained. He protected people and kept them safe, but when he needed help, he was all alone. A small hand shot up in the front row. Principal Garcia nodded at the child, a girl perhaps 6 years, old with pigtails and a serious expression. "Was you scared when you went in the boat?" she asked Lily. The directness of the question momentarily caught Lily off guard, but she appreciated its honesty. "Yes," she admitted, "I was very scared. The water was high and moving fast, and it was dark. But sometimes being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you do what's right, even though you are scared." This answer seemed to satisfy not just the questioner, but many of the children, who nodded as if processing an important truth. More hands rose, and Lily found herself fielding questions with growing confidence. How did Ranger get his name? He was named when he joined the police. Does he live with you now? Yes, and we're hoping it stays that way forever. Can he do police dog tricks? Some, but he's learning new skills now. At Chief Harrison's suggestion, Lily demonstrated some of Ranger's training, basic commands that showcased his intelligence and discipline. The children applauded each successful execution, their enthusiasm infectious. "Now," Chief Harrison said, taking over, "Ranger has a new job. He's going to be visiting schools like yours, hospitals, nursing homes, and community events as our K9 ambassador. His job is to help people understand how to care for animals properly, and to show how animals who have been rescued can give back to their communities." A teacher raised her hand. "Will Ranger be helping with the therapy sessions for flood-affected children?" "Yes," Harrison confirmed. "He's being certified as a therapy dog as well as an ambassador. Animals like Ranger can help people process difficult experiences and emotions." As if to demonstrate this very point, Ranger moved to the edge of the stage, where a child in a wheelchair sat watching intently. Without command, he gently placed his head on the child's lap, allowing a hesitant hand to stroke his fur. The simple interaction brought tears to several watching teachers' eyes. The assembly concluded with children coming up in small groups to meet Ranger properly. Lily supervised each interaction, showing them how to approach calmly and where Ranger preferred to be petted. Throughout it all, Ranger remained poised and gentle, his eyes occasionally finding Lily's as if to check that she approved of his performance. As the last group returned to their places, Principal Garcia presented Lily with a large, colorful card signed by every student and staff member. "Thank you for showing our students what real courage looks like," she said warmly. Leaving the school, Lily felt a curious mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The nervous energy that had sustained her during the presentation ebbed away, leaving a quiet pride in its wake. Beside her, Ranger walked with the same steady presence he had maintained throughout, though his occasional tail wags suggested he too felt the satisfaction of a job well done. They had just enough time to return home and change before the meeting with the apartment manager. Lily's parents were already there, her father adjusting his tie nervously while her mother reviewed a folder of documentation they had prepared. Ranger's medical clearance, his K9 ambassador certification, letters of support from Chief Harrison and Dr. Winters, and the court ruling granting them custody. "How did the school visit go?" her mother asked, looking up from her papers. "Really well," Lily said, unable to contain her smile. "The kids loved him, and he was perfect." "Of course he was," her father said, reaching down to scratch behind Ranger's ears. "He's a professional." The drive to their apartment building was filled with a tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts about what lay ahead. The familiar structure came into view. A 4-story brick building, now surrounded by industrial fans and dehumidifiers, its first floor still showing water damage, but the upper floors apparently intact. Mr. Greaves, the building manager, met them in what had once been the lobby but was now a construction zone. He was a thin man with perpetually pursed lips and a rule-book approach to management that had frustrated the Chens on more than one occasion. "Let's use my temporary office," he suggested, leading them to a converted maintenance room at the back of the building. Inside, a desk and chairs had been arranged in an approximation of his former office, though the surrounding shelves of cleaning supplies somewhat undermined the professional setting. As they settled into the uncomfortable metal chairs, Mr. Greaves cleared his throat. "I've reviewed your request for an exception to our no pets policy," he began, his tone giving no indication of his leanings. "As you know, our policy is extremely strict, allowing only certified service animals with specific documentation." Lily's mother nodded, opening their folder. "We understand, which is why we've prepared everything you might need to evaluate Ranger's qualification for exception status." She began presenting their case methodically. Ranger's official designation as a K9 ambassador, his ongoing therapy dog certification, the special circumstances of his rescue, and the court ruling that had formalized their custody. Mr. Greaves listened with an impassive expression, occasionally making notes or examining a document more closely. When the presentation concluded, he leaned back in his chair, his gaze shifting to Ranger, who sat perfectly at attention beside Lily's chair. "The documentation is certainly comprehensive," he acknowledged, "but I have concerns about several aspects of this situation." Lily's heart sank. She had heard that tone before, the precursor to a firm no wrapped in bureaucratic language. "Mr. Greaves," her father began, clearly preparing to launch into further argument. But the manager held up his hand. "Please allow me to finish. My concerns are not about your documentation or even about the dog's qualifications. They're about whether this building is the right environment for an animal with Ranger's background and needs." This unexpected direction caught them all by surprise. "What do you mean?" Lily asked, unable to stay silent. Mr. Greaves' expression softened slightly. "Your apartment is on the 3rd floor of a building with no elevator. There's minimal green space around the property. The units are small with thin walls, meaning any noise could disturb neighbors. And given what this animal has been through, wouldn't he benefit from a more suitable environment?" Before anyone could respond, he continued, "Which is why I took the liberty of speaking with the owner about an alternative solution." He withdrew a folder of his own and placed it on the desk. "The owner also manages a townhouse development on Maple Street, Riverside Terrace. There's a 2-bedroom unit available there with a small private yard. Ground floor, no stairs. It's within your current rent range, with only a moderate increase that the owner is willing to waive for the first 6 months in light of the flood circumstances." Lily's parents exchanged startled glances. "You're suggesting we move to a townhouse rather than return to our apartment," her mother clarified. "I'm suggesting that might be the simplest solution for everyone involved," Mr. Greaves replied. "You get appropriate housing for your family's new, situation. The owner fills a vacant unit, and I don't have to navigate the complexities of policy exceptions that might lead other tenants to challenge our no pets rule. He slid the folder toward them. The details are all there. The unit is available immediately, already cleaned and certified flood-free. I've taken the liberty of having your security deposit transferred to this property if you decide to accept. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lily's father began to laugh, a surprised, relieved sound that broke the tension in the room. This time, we've been preparing for a fight, he said, and instead you're offering us a better option outright. Mr. Greaves allowed himself a small smile. Contrary to what some tenants believe, I'm not actually opposed to reasonable solutions. I just have rules to enforce. He glanced at Ranger. Besides, everyone in town has heard about this dog and the little girl who saved him. I'm not about to be the villain in that story. They left the meeting with the keys to their new townhouse and directions to view it immediately if they wished. In the car, the mood was dramatically lighter, with even Ranger seeming to sense the positive shift in energy. I can't believe it, Lily's mother kept saying. A real yard for Ranger. And for you, her father added, glancing at Lily in the rearview mirror. Room to work with him on his training properly. The townhouse exceeded their expectations. Located on a quiet street just a few blocks from the river, though on higher ground that had escaped flooding, it featured 2 bedrooms, an updated kitchen, and, most importantly, a fully fenced backyard, perfect for Ranger's needs. The previous tenants had even installed a doggy door, an irony not lost on any of them, given their struggles with pet permissions. As Lily explored the space that would become their new home, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This wasn't just a place to live. It was a fresh start for all of them, a physical manifestation of the changes the flood had brought to their lives. "What do you think, boy?" she asked Ranger, who was meticulously inspecting every corner of what would be her bedroom. "Is this home?" He looked up at her, his intelligent eyes seeming to consider the question seriously, before he gave a decisive tail wag that made her laugh. That evening, as they returned to Officer Mercer's house to begin planning their move, Lily received a text message from Dr. Winters. "Great news! Official therapy dog evaluator can see Ranger next Tuesday. This is the final step for his certification." The pieces were falling into place with an almost miraculous synchronicity. The new home, the ambassador role, the therapy certification. It was as if the universe was confirming what Lily had felt in her heart since that night on the floodwaters, that she and Ranger had been meant to find each other, to save each other in ways that went far beyond physical rescue. As they settled in for their last few nights in Officer Mercer's house, an unexpected visitor arrived. Sarah Mercer, carrying pizza and a small gift bag. "I heard about your new place," she said as they welcomed her in. "Thought you might need dinner amid the planning chaos." Over pizza, Sarah shared stories about her brother and Ranger's early days together, their training struggles, their first successful missions, the bond that had formed between them. Rather than bringing sadness, these stories seemed to complete a circle, connecting Ranger's past to his present in ways that honored both. "James would be so proud," Sarah said, watching as Ranger demonstrated a new therapy dog technique for Lily. "Not just of Ranger, but of you, Lily. You've given him exactly what he needed, purpose and love." After dinner, Sarah presented Lily with the gift bag. Inside was a framed photograph of Officer Mercer and Ranger in their formal police portrait, both looking dignified and proud in their respective uniforms. "For your new home," Sarah explained, "so you never forget where he came from, even as you build something new together." Lily ran her fingers over the frame, deeply moved by the gesture. "Thank you. We'll put it somewhere special." That night, as Lily prepared for bed, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Just weeks ago, she had been an ordinary girl, quiet and cautious, living an unremarkable life in a small town. Ranger had been chained and abandoned, his previous life of service and honor reduced to neglect and cruelty. Now, everything had changed. She had discovered courage she never knew she possessed. He had found a new purpose that honored his abilities while healing his spirit. Together, they had created something neither could have achieved alone, a bond that transcended the usual boundaries between human and animal, rescuer and rescued. As if sensing her thoughts, Ranger left his bed and came to sit beside her, resting, his head on her lap in a gesture that had become their private ritual. In the quiet of the room that had once belonged to his first partner, they shared a moment of perfect understanding. Two souls who had found each other in crisis and chosen to build something lasting from that foundation. Outside, the town of Mill Creek Valley continued its recovery, streets and buildings slowly returning to normal. But normal was a relative term now. For Lily and Ranger, and perhaps for many others touched by the flood's unexpected connections, normal would never be quite the same again. In the days ahead lay new challenges, moving to their townhouse, continuing Ranger's therapy certification, balancing school with his ambassador duties. But these were challenges they would face together, strengthened by what they had already overcome. As Lily drifted toward sleep, her hand resting on Ranger's head, she realized that the flood, for all its destruction, had washed away certain barriers in her life. Fear of speaking up, doubt in her own abilities, the invisible walls that had kept her small and hesitant in a world that sometimes seemed too big and complicated to navigate. In their place had come clarity, purpose, a bone-deep understanding that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more. That sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply to act when others won't. That even the smallest hands can change a life when they reach out instead of turning away. These weren't just lessons for a 10-year-old girl or a rescued K9. They were truths that rippled outward, touching the lives of everyone who heard their story, from school children inspired by their assembly presentation to community members, following their journey through local news coverage to viewers across the country who would soon watch their interview on the Heroes Among Us segment. Tomorrow would bring more steps on this unexpected path. More opportunities to demonstrate what it means to see the worth in those others have discarded. More chances to transform trauma into purpose, fear into action, endings into beginnings. For tonight, though, it was enough to rest in the knowledge that what had started as a desperate rescue on flood-swollen waters had become something more profound, a reminder that sometimes salvation moves in both directions, that in saving others we often save ourselves, and that even in our darkest hours, connection and compassion can build bridges stronger than any flood can wash away. Ranger's steady breathing deepened as he drifted into sleep, secure in the knowledge that his chain had been broken not just physically, but in every way that mattered. Beside him, Lily's hand remained gentle on his fur, a promise kept and a future beckoning. Two lives forever changed by one moment of courage in rising waters. A gentle autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke across Mill Creek Valley. The town square had been transformed for the inaugural Community Heroes Festival, with colorful booths, food trucks, and a central stage decorated with banners and flowers. Volunteers in bright t-shirts directed visitors, handed out programs, and coordinated activities. Near the eastern edge of the square stood a special tent marked K9 Ambassadors Program. Inside, a striking Belgian Malinois in a blue service vest sat in perfect position next to a now 11-year-old girl, whose once shy demeanor had been replaced by quiet confidence. Together, they greeted visitors, demonstrated training techniques, and shared information about animal rescue and rehabilitation. "Ranger, focus," Lily said softly, and the dog's attention immediately locked onto her, ignoring the distractions of passing children and food aromas. "That's amazing," commented a woman who had stopped to watch. "How long did it take to train him to focus like that?" Lily smiled, remembering the months of patient work. He already knew how from his police training. We just had to rebuild his trust so he could use those skills again. The woman nodded thoughtfully. "My sister just adopted a rescue dog that's really nervous around people. Do you think there's hope?" "Always," Lily said with conviction. "It takes time and patience, but every dog deserves that chance." As the woman left with a handful of brochures, Chief Harrison approached the tent, accompanied by several uniformed officers and a news crew. "Ready for the ceremony?" he asked. Lily nodded, though butterflies danced in her stomach. 1 year exactly had passed since the flood that had changed everything. Today's festival was not just a community celebration of recovery, but a special commemoration of those who had gone above and beyond during the crisis. She and Ranger had spent the morning meeting people, answering questions, and demonstrating the impact of their K9 ambassador program. In the past year, they had visited every school in the county, participated in therapy sessions with flood-affected families, and helped launch a new animal rescue network that connected emergency services with trained volunteers during disasters. "They're ready for you at the main stage," Chief Harrison said. "Your parents are already seated in the front row." Lily took a deep breath and stood. "Let's go, Ranger." Together they walked through the festival, many people stopping to wave or call out greetings. The once anonymous girl and abandoned dog had become well-known figures in Mill Creek Valley, symbols of the community's resilience and renewal. The main stage was decorated with photographs documenting the flood and recovery, arranged to tell a story of challenge overcome through cooperation and courage. Mayor Wilson, a silver-haired woman with a commanding presence, was just concluding her opening remarks as Lily and Ranger reached the side entrance. "Which is why today is not just about celebrating how far we've come," the mayor was saying, "but about recognizing those whose actions embodied the very best of our community spirit. Those who saw need and acted, who faced danger to help others, who reminded us what it truly means to be neighbors." A small orchestra, comprised of high school students, played a gentle accompaniment as slides showed images of the flood's aftermath. Volunteers filling sandbags, rescue boats navigating, submerged streets, community meals served in the high school gymnasium. Our first honorees today represent the extraordinary bond between humans and animals, and how that bond can inspire us all to be better, Mayor Wilson continued. "Please welcome Lily Chen and Ranger, recipients of the inaugural Mill Creek Valley Courage Award." Applause erupted as Lily and Ranger walked onto the stage. Ranger moved with perfect composure, his coat gleaming in the autumn sunlight, his posture displaying the dignity of his police training combined with the approachability of his therapy work. Standing at the podium, looking out at the gathered community, Lily felt a moment of surreal clarity. Just a year ago, she had been the quiet girl who hesitated to raise her hand in class. Now she was addressing hundreds of people without a tremor in her voice. "Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and thank you to everyone who made this festival possible," she began. "A year ago today, water was rising all around us. Many of you lost homes, belongings, and businesses. But you never lost your compassion." Glanced down at Ranger, who sat attentively beside her. "When I found Ranger chained to that flooding house, I wasn't thinking about being brave. I was just thinking that no one deserves to be abandoned when they need help most." A hush had fallen over the crowd as they listened. "What I've learned since then," Lily continued, "is that courage isn't some special quality that only heroes have. It's a choice we all can make every day in big and small ways. To see when something is wrong and not look away. To act when action is needed, even if we're scared. To believe that one person, even a kid like me, can make a difference. From the front row, her parents watched with visible pride. Beside them sat Dr. Winters, Michael Torres, and Sarah Mercer, the supportive circle that had helped transform a desperate midnight rescue into something that continued to touch lives throughout the community. Ranger and I accept this award on behalf of all the animals still waiting for someone to speak up for them, and all the people who haven't yet discovered their own capacity for courage, Lily said. Because if there's one thing we've learned, it's that heroes don't always wear uniforms or capes. Sometimes they're just ordinary people who make an extraordinary choice. As Mayor Wilson presented a crystal award etched with their names, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Ranger, responding to a subtle hand signal from Lily, executed a formal bow that brought appreciative applause. Back at their tent after the ceremony, surrounded by well-wishers, Lily felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Mr. Porter, the elderly neighbor who had accompanied her on the rescue mission that night. Though they had stayed in touch, his health had limited his public appearances, making his presence today particularly special. "Fine speech you gave," he said, his weathered face creasing in a smile. "Your parents must be proud." "I couldn't have done any of it without you," Lily reminded him. "You're the real hero." He waved off the compliment. "I just rowed a boat. You're the one who jumped into that water without a second thought." He knelt with some difficulty to greet Ranger, who recognized him immediately, pressing his head into the old man's hand with obvious affection. "Wanted to tell you," Mr. Porter said, keeping his voice low, "they found Victor's brother's breeding operation last week. State police raid. Over 30 dogs rescued, all in terrible shape." Lily's eyes widened. Despite Victor's legal defeat, rumors had persisted that his brother had continued their unethical breeding business across county lines. The police had been investigating for months. The evidence from Ranger's case helped build their investigation. Mr. Porter continued, "Those dogs are safe now because of what you started." A profound satisfaction settled in Lily's chest. Not triumph over Victor, but relief that more animals would be spared what Ranger had endured. It was further confirmation that actions born of compassion could ripple outward in ways impossible to predict. As the festival continued around them, Lily took a moment to reflect on the year's journey. Their townhouse had become a true home, with Ranger's therapy certification prominently framed alongside the photograph of him with Officer Mercer. The backyard had been enhanced with training equipment donated by the police department. 3 mornings a week, Lily still assisted at Dr. Winters' clinic, now rebuilt in its original location, developing skills she hoped would lead to a future veterinary career. Most significantly, the Canine Ambassador program had expanded beyond just Ranger. 2 other retired police dogs had joined the initiative, along with several rehabilitated rescue animals. The program now provided services throughout the county, with Lily helping train new youth volunteers in basic handling techniques. "There you are," Dr. Winters called, approaching with a plate of festival food. "You need to eat something. You've been at this tent all day." As Lily gratefully accepted the plate, Dr. Winters lowered her voice. "The university representatives are here. They'd like to meet you both before the afternoon demonstration." This news sent a fresh flutter of nervous excitement through Lily. The State University's veterinary program had expressed interest in their work, suggesting a potential partnership that could expand the Canine Ambassador initiative to other communities affected by disasters. "Does Ranger need a break first?" Dr. Winters asked, always mindful of the dog's well-being. Lily assessed her partner with practiced eyes. Though they had been active since early morning, Ranger showed no signs of stress or fatigue. If anything, he seemed energized by the day's activities, his posture alert and engaged. "He's good," she decided. "He thrives on having purpose." Dr. Winters smiled knowingly, much like his handler. As they prepared to meet the university representatives, Lily caught sight of a family hesitantly approaching their tent. Parents with a young daughter who appeared to be around 7. The child partially hid behind her mother, eyes fixed on Ranger with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Go ahead," Dr. Winters encouraged. "I'll tell them you'll be there in 5 minutes." Lily nodded gratefully and knelt to the little girl's level. "Would you like to meet Ranger? He's very gentle." The child nodded without emerging from behind her mother. "He was very scared once, too," Lily told her. "Sometimes meeting someone who understands being afraid can help us be brave." Slowly, Ranger demonstrated the careful approach he had been taught for interactions with anxious children, lying down at a comfortable distance, making himself less intimidating, waiting patiently for the child to make the first move. The girl's mother explained softly, "Our house was badly damaged in the flood. She's been having nightmares ever since." Understanding immediately, Lily shared a look with Ranger. This was exactly why they did this work, not for awards or recognition, but for moments like this. "Ranger has nightmares sometimes too," she told the girl, "but he's learning that bad things from the past don't mean there can't be good things in the future." Gradually, with gentle encouragement, the child edged forward until she was close enough to touch Ranger's fur with tentative fingers. When he responded with nothing more than a soft sigh of contentment, a small smile appeared on her face, perhaps the first in a long time. "He likes you," Lily said. "He's a very good judge of character." By the time the family moved on, the little girl was standing taller, something in her expression lighter, as if a small but significant burden had been lifted. It wasn't a miracle cure for trauma, but it was a beginning, a tiny crack in the wall of fear where light could start to enter. This, Lily reflected as they made their way toward the university meeting, was the true meaning of their journey. Not the awards or newspaper articles or even the expanded program, but these individual connections. These moments where pain began its transformation into healing, where fear gave way to the first tentative steps of trust. The afternoon unfolded in a blur of demonstrations, meetings, and conversations. Ranger performed flawlessly, showcasing both his therapy skills and his remembered police training. The university representatives were visibly impressed, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions about the program's methodology and results. As the day's light began to soften toward evening, Lily and Ranger found a quiet moment away from the festival's bustle. They sat together on a bench overlooking the river that had changed their lives, now peaceful within its banks, giving no hint of its previous destruction. "You did good today, boy," Lily said softly, her hand resting on Ranger's neck where the chain had once left its marks. The scars were still visible if you knew where to look, but they were fading, covered now by healthy fur and the dignified blue collar of his service vest. Ranger leaned against her side, his warm weight familiar and comforting. In his intelligent eyes, Lily saw not just the trauma he had overcome, but the purpose he had found, a reflection of her own journey from frightened child to confident young leader. The festival lights began to twinkle on as dusk gathered, music and laughter carrying across the square. Soon they would rejoin the celebration, continue their work of connection and education. But for now, this quiet moment of reflection felt necessary, an acknowledgement of the distance traveled, the obstacles overcome, the lives transformed. From where they sat, they could just make out the neighborhood where Victor's house had once stood. It had been demolished after the flood, the property purchased by a community trust that planned to create a small park with a dog-friendly area. From destruction had come renewal, from cruelty, compassion, from abandonment, purpose. "Lily! Ranger!" Her father's voice called from the festival grounds. "They're about to start the closing ceremony." Ranger stood immediately, alert and ready. Lily rose beside him, brushing leaves from her jeans. "Ready for one more?" she asked him. His answering look needed no translation. Always, it seemed to say, always forward, always together. As they walked back toward the lights and music, Lily thought about all the paths that had led to this moment, the courage of a midnight rescue, the determination of recovery, the daily choices to transform pain into purpose. None of it had been easy. All of it had been worth it. The little girl who had once feared raising her hand in class now addressed hundreds without hesitation. The abandoned dog who had once pulled desperately against a chain now moved with confident freedom beside her. Neither was defined by what had happened to them, but by what they had chosen to create from those circumstances. And perhaps that was the most powerful lesson of all, that life's meaning isn't determined by the floods that threaten to overwhelm us, but by what we build once the waters recede, that our greatest challenges can become the foundation for our greatest contributions, that sometimes the hand that reaches out in our darkest moment doesn't just save us from drowning, but shows us how to swim. As they rejoined the festival, moving together through a community forever changed by shared adversity and collective resilience, Lily and Ranger carried with them the simple truth at the heart of their extraordinary journey, that courage, compassion, and connection remain the most powerful forces for transformation in a broken world, a light no flood can extinguish, a bond no chain can break. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.